Keir Starmer using the Ukraine crisis as an opportunity to attack backbenchers within his own party who just want to make sure that there's peace, who just want to avoid unavoidable death, right? Starmer at that point using this really kind of frustrating political and geopolitical incident to engage in factual infighting is incredibly fucking embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. We have the diplomats in the Conservative Party going over to Russia and engaging in some of the most horrendously poor diplomatic negotiations to try and save lives in Ukraine. And what does Starmer do? What does Keith fucking Starmer do at this juncture? He then starts attacking Jeremy Corbyn and Diane Abbott. It was crazy as well. Is everyone keeps saying, oh, anyone who doesn't get deliberately behind Keith Starmer is somehow a Tory enabler, despite the fact that he's been given multiple opportunities on a fucking plate to eviscerate the ineffectual and embarrassingly poor governing decisions of the Conservative Party. He keeps getting offered them on a plate and doesn't even take them. He just completely fucking ignores them. I was responding to an Owen Jones piece here. Like, Owen Jones posted a tweet saying, let me bring up on screen. Can I ask a question to the Starmer fans yelling at me in my mentions because I'm genuinely interested? Is your argument that Starmer has remained faithful to his leadership election promises, or that he has dishonestly broken them, but dishonesty is fine as long as it's on your team? And then the vast majority of the responses are just, well, Keith Starmer is the person who we want to lead the party because he thinks he's in the best position to beat the Conservatives. I'm like, first of all, the guy doesn't know how to stick it in at all because he keeps being, as I said before, he keeps being offered these opportunities to spear the Conservative government for their failings around like the Ukraine issue, around the cost of living crisis, around general market failure with regards to housing, all these kind of things that the Conservatives continue screwing up on, COVID deaths, etc. He refuses to skewer the government on or refuses to hold them to account. Didn't even try and get concessions when Boris Johnson needed Labour votes to pass new restrictions back in October or whatever it was, right? And then use these opportunities, just continually engaging in factional infighting against people who he really needs on his side to be able to win an election, whilst also taking all the pledges that he said he would follow to be Labour leader and putting them in the trash. It doesn't make any sense, like, right? As I say here, if you think that you have to move towards the centre for Labour to win an election, why would you champion as your leader someone who continually lies about the positions that he supports, doesn't engage in any kind of reasonable critique of the Conservative Party and their actions, who bankrupts the party by alienating members and alienating the unions so much so that they have to fire staff, or engage in salary reductions for a party that's supposed to be about working people, who has an incredibly low favourability at minus 16 points, despite the fact that Labour are ahead in the polls, and was the architect of the second referendum policy that led to the disastrous defeat in the first place. It doesn't make any fucking sense. There's plenty of other reasonably centrist possible leaders there could be to replace Keith Starmer. Why are they so enamoured with him specifically? I don't get it. I just don't get these people. They call themselves, that these liberals, they really think that they're the political adults in the room. They really think that they're the people who are just fighting against a tide of infantile Corbyn supporters getting really angry that their magic grandpa isn't the head of the Labour Party at this point. That's what they think they are. But really, these are the political infants, right? These are the fucking crybabies who think that all party politics is just team sports. It's red versus blue, policies don't matter, integrity doesn't matter, all that matters is winning, right? These are the people who don't have any kind of any idea of what kind of political sphere should exist for. They're so incredibly immature. They just think that their adherence to liberal consensus politics makes them somehow more mature by default, when it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. When if you actually look at the polling, you look at the issues people care about, the left-wing proposals are the ones that have popular support. Like, I'm happy to admit that I think that Jeremy Corbyn was not a great leader of the Labour Party. His manifesto was good and his policies were good, but as a person, someone to deliver those policies, he wasn't very good. But why throw the baby out with the bathwater? It doesn't make any fucking sense. And what's going to happen is, in 2 years' time, Boris Johnson will have been ousted, someone more sensible will be the leader of the Conservative Party, everyone will have forgotten about Partygate, they'll all have forgotten. That'll be a distant memory because it's been attached to Boris Johnson now because of dumb shit like what Wes Streeting said about how it's not endemic to the Conservative Party. It's a Boris Johnson issue. He'll go. They'll no longer be able to pin this to the Tories at the next electoral cycle. And then, because they've spent this entirety of the last 2 years playing lip service to the neoliberal establishment that is bankrupting and destroying the country and making the lives of working people immeasurably worse time after time after time, because they've spent 2 years paying lip service to that ideology, kind of by tacit endorsement, when it actually comes around to the electoral cycle, there's going to be no difference between the two parties, and then they're going to lose, just like Ed Miliband did in 2015. And these idiots are going to have fucking egg on their face because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They don't know. They have no idea. There's a reason why Labour are up in the polls, but Starmer is a minus 16 points of on the popularity scale, and that's because when you look at the actual stats from the actual Westminster polling, the reason why the Conservatives are below Labour is because they've lost voters, mostly to apathy. Only 5% of 2019 Tory voters now say they'll vote Labour going forward. All that neoliberal posturing has not brought anybody over. Like, Conservative voters may not want to vote Conservative because of Partygate and because they feel frustrated with the political force that the Conservatives are at the moment. But if that all changes come the next election, they're going to be voting Tory again. And it even shows that in the older generations, the 55s and above, Labour they haven't gained any support at all. It was YouGov polling that came out today showing so. But these older generations, they will never vote Labour. And trying to court these people is just a waste of time. It's a complete waste of time. Why would you even bother? Because these are all people with asset wealth, and any political party that wants to come and change the status quo to make things better for young people, better for millennials, better for people who aren't on the housing ladder already, better for the working class, of course they're going to vote against it, 'cause it's not within their interest with which to do so. I don't think that they probably quite realizes how entrenched in the political, in some kind of political ideology, like the members of the older generation are at this point, the people who got gifted all of the benefits of the social democratic consensus before it got torn up by Thatcher with which to cement their vote as a voting cohort, right? They don't think they realise that. You need to be able to move people over from other political forces to be able to win these elections. You need to engender support in the non-voting populace and gain support in the wider electorate, because these are the people who are going to actually be properly serviced by Labour Party political platform, or like at least a proper one anyway, rather than the neoliberal garbage that Starmer is pushing at the moment. It's incredibly naive and incredibly short-sighted. It's incredibly frustrating to watch just Keith Starmer destroy the Labour Party from the inside. I mean, what happens if the Unite funding goes? What the fuck are they going to do then? I hope all the other unions do the same thing. Just threaten them. Just say, look, we will withdraw funding. Like, I'll still vote for them. At the general at least, in depending on the local elections, depending who my councillors are. If there's breakthrough councillors in local elections, I'll definitely vote breakthrough. But in the general election, I live in a swing seat, like a red-blue one in Broxtowe, so there's literally no point in me voting for anybody else. Like, I'm forced, my hand is real forced. Like, the reason I think it's worth leaving is just because by removing your membership, you're cutting into Starmer's funding. Like, if it gets to the point where everyone hates him so much that the party literally can't fund itself, then he's going to be forced with which to leave. That's my thought anyway. Like, I don't, and the issue I have in my area as well is it's currently a Tory seat, so then I don't know anything about the kind of the Labour candidate coming up, and you know how kind of snide a bunch of the right leaning members of the party are at this point, where I can't, if someone even says it, then they're not like hostile to the left as a prospective MP for my constituency. Like, how do I know? How do I know they're not going to just change tack like halfway through the electoral cycle? I agree, Metaphysical. I absolutely agree. I think it will cause a huge amount of damage if he does become prime minister. And his recent comments with regards to the Ukraine-Russia situation just shows he's just as much of a war hawk as Blair was. I just hope that Rayner stays deputy, because I feel like I as much as she's cringe at certain points, I do have like a general trust that Rayner will do the right thing. Like, she's not really engaged in the kind of factional infighting the way that Starmer has. And they, from what I've been known to hear, they don't really like each other very much. So I have faith in having Rayner there as some kind of mitigating influence will be good, whereas obviously Brown was right up Blair's fucking arsehole. Well, yeah, and like Angela Rayner came up through the union movement, right? So she's at least tied to working people. Like she was a single mom. She worked hard for where she is. Like I just kind of innately trust her just from where her roots are, rather than fucking Keith Starmer, the knighted QC from London. I don't like. How are you supposed to trust that? How's the country supposed to trust that? Whereas just like a normal working lass from Ashton, I feel like is far more trustworthy in general for the public to want to support. But I don't know. And her continuous connection to the trade union movement means that at least she'll put working people first. And in general, like she's been explicitly trans inclusive, which is a fucking which is a one in a million from a Labour Party member at this point, right? Like she's explicitly trans inclusive, which is great. And like her Twitter feed is just like attacking the Tories constantly. I do have confidence that she would do the right thing. People say that like the left on the left of the Labour Party, people are just never happy with anything. And I'm like, no, we would literally be happy with anything better than the worst fucking person possible, which Starmer is being at the moment. Like, it's so much. There's so many people. I even like when I tweet like Burnham, Rayner, Thornbury, all these people are well to the right of me ideologically, but I just recognise that they're not fucking assholes like Starmer is.